Dear friends, welcome to our journey today through the mysterious paths of the soul. Each of us has at least once pondered, do those who have left this world hear us? Do they feel our words, our songs, our whispers in the quiet of the night? These questions become particularly poignant when we lose loved ones, when we miss the chance to speak with them just one more time. Allow me to share the story of James from Portland. 5 years ago, he lost his wife, with whom he had spent 43 happy years. In the first months after her passing, he often talked to her aloud while sitting by the window in their bedroom. It brought him comfort, but deep in his heart, he doubted whether his words reached her. One day, on a particularly difficult day, when the longing was unbearable, James played their favorite melody, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. And at that moment, he felt something he could not describe with ordinary words. It was as if a warm wave enveloped the room, and somewhere at the level of his heart, rather than his ears, he heard, or rather felt, the presence of his wife. It was not a physical sensation, James later recounted. It was something greater, as if our souls touched through the sounds of music. In that moment, I understood that she always hears me, just not in the way we are used to perceiving sounds in life. Have you, dear viewers, ever wondered how exactly our departed loved ones can hear our voices? What happens when we reach out to them with a request, gratitude, or simply share an important event? Do they hear our words, or perhaps feel the emotions we invest in those words? Our conversation today is an attempt to peek behind the veil of mystery and understand how the soul can perceive the sounds of the physical world while remaining outside it. We have gathered testimonies from people who have experienced near-death experiences, studied ancient spiritual practices, and modern scientific research to get closer to the answer to this intriguing question. And perhaps what you will hear today will give you comfort and a new perspective on your connection with those who are no longer physically with us, but whose presence in our lives we continue to feel. Before we dive into the depths of our topic, let's try to understand what the soul actually is. In different cultures and spiritual traditions, this concept is interpreted in various ways. For some, the soul is the immortal part of a human being that continues to live after physical death. For others, it is an energetic essence, vibrating at a certain frequency. Others see it as the sum of our consciousness, memory, and emotions, existing outside of the physical body. But however we define the soul, a logical question arises. How can a bodiless entity perceive physical sound waves? After all, sound in our world is mechanical vibrations that propagate through air, liquids, or solids. To perceive them, we need ears, auditory nerves, and certain parts of the brain. But what happens when the physical body is no longer present? This question troubles many of us, especially when we stand at the grave of a loved one and whisper words that we did not manage to say during their lifetime, or when, in a difficult moment, we seek advice from departed parents. Do they hear us? And if so, how exactly does this happen? Imagine for a moment Elizabeth from Chicago. After losing her husband, she talks to his photograph every morning, sharing her plans for the day and expressing her joys and sorrows. I know it may seem strange, but I feel like he hears me, she says. Not with his ears, of course, in some other way. In our conversation today, we will explore several possible explanations for how the soul can perceive the sounds of the living. We will look at testimonies from people who have experienced near-death experiences, examine the vibrational theory of perception, discuss the special significance of natural sounds, and the role of prayers in communicating with the departed. And of course, we will share practical recommendations for those who wish to establish such a connection. It is important to understand that our conversation does not claim to hold absolute truth. We are merely opening a door to a world of possibilities and inviting you to decide for yourselves what resonates with your heart and your experience. Let us turn to testimonies and research that may shed light on the mystery of how the soul perceives sounds. In recent decades, a substantial amount of scientific data has accumulated regarding near-death experiences, which prompts us to contemplate the possibilities of consciousness beyond the physical body. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler from the Chicago Medical Center has been gathering and analyzing testimonies from patients who have experienced clinical death for over 20 years. According to her data, about 1 in 4 such patients reports hearing conversations among medical staff at the time when devices recorded a lack of brain activity. Many could repeat in detail the words of doctors and nurses spoken in the operating room while the patient was unconscious, says Dr. Kubler. This makes us reconsider traditional notions of how perception works. One particularly interesting case involves Robert from Minneapolis, whose heart stopped for 6 minutes during a complicated surgery. After being revived, he detailed not only the actions of the surgeons, but also their conversation about fishing over the weekend, which they were having at the moment of the critical situation. It was as if I were floating under the ceiling and could hear everything perfectly, even though my body was lying on the operating table, recalls Robert. The sounds were crystal clear, even better than how they are normally perceived by the ears. Another layer of testimonies comes from people with mediumistic abilities. Margaret, a professional medium from Boston with 30 years of experience, describes the process this way. Souls do not hear sound waves as we do. They perceive the emotional energy behind the words. Pure love, sincere gratitude, deep sorrow. These feelings create vibrations that souls can hear much more clearly than mere words. Interestingly, many mediums agree that emotionally charged sounds are perceived by souls much better than mechanical speech. A prayer spoken with deep feeling reaches its goal faster than a formal address. A song sung with love creates a stronger channel of communication than simply mentioning the name of the departed. Janet from Arizona, who lost her daughter in a car accident, sings a lullaby to her every evening that she used to sing in her childhood. When I sing, I feel she's nearby. It's not just comfort, it's a real sense of presence. One of the most intriguing concepts explaining the soul's ability to perceive sounds is the vibrational theory. According to this theory, after separating from the physical body, the soul continues to exist as an energy field, capable of interacting with specific vibrations in our world. Sound, in its physical nature, is nothing more than a vibration that propagates through space. And if the soul represents an energetic entity, then the perception of vibrations is quite natural for it. It is important to understand that not all sounds are equally heard by souls. Emotionally charged sounds, filled with sincere feelings, create special vibrational patterns that resonate with the soul's energy field. This is why a conversation filled with love and longing can be perceived by the soul much more clearly than a simple mechanical address. A particularly strong resonance occurs when the voices of loved ones are heard. This is explained by the fact that there are special energetic connections between close souls that are not severed by the death of the physical body. These connections work like unique antennas, capturing and amplifying the vibrations coming from loved ones. The story of Thomas from Florida serves as a beautiful illustration of this theory. After the passing of his wife, with whom he had lived for 52 years, he played melodies on their old piano every evening that they loved together. When I play our favorite composition by Chopin, I feel the energy in the room change, Thomas shares. It becomes warmer, as if she is sitting next to me on the couch, just like she did in life. Sometimes I even feel a light touch on my shoulder or hear a whisper at the edge of audibility. According to the vibrational theory, music creates particularly favorable conditions for contact with the souls of the departed. Musical pieces that held special significance for a person during their life can serve as a bridge between worlds. They create a unique vibrational code, a sort of call sign, by which the soul recognizes that the communication is directed specifically to it. Interestingly, many people note a sense of presence from their departed loved ones precisely at the moment when significant music plays for them. It could be their favorite song, the melody of their first dance, or a lullaby from childhood. Sounds filled with special emotional meaning. The sounds of nature hold a special place in the perception of the soul. Since ancient times, people have noticed that the sound of water, the rustling of leaves, the singing of birds, and other natural sounds create a unique atmosphere conducive to spiritual contact. Unlike the artificial noises of the modern world, natural sounds possess pure, inherent vibrations that are thought to be more easily perceived by the souls of the departed. The sound of flowing water, whether it is a river stream, a waterfall, or ocean waves, has long been considered one of the most powerful conduits between worlds. In many cultures, there is a belief that souls can travel through water, and thus hear us better near bodies of water. When I want to talk to my mom, I always go to the lake, shares Dorothy from Michigan. There, by the water, I feel her presence especially strongly. It's as if the waves themselves carry my words to her. The wind is another natural phenomenon traditionally associated with the spirit world. Many people report feeling the presence of departed loved ones at moments when a gentle breeze suddenly picks up, or when the wind rustles the leaves of trees. It feels like they are speaking to us through the whisper of the wind, notes William from Vermont, who lost his brother 2 years ago. When I walk in our old forest and hear the wind playing in the treetops, I know my brother hears me. The singing of birds is also often perceived as a sign from the departed. Many share stories of how an unusual bird appears at significant moments or begins to sing in response to a call to a loved one who has passed away. Sarah from California shares, "My father loved hummingbirds. After he left, I often talked to him while sitting in the garden. Almost always, after a while, a hummingbird arrives and hovers right in front of me. In those moments, I am absolutely certain that my father not only hears me, but also responds." Many spiritual practices recommend using natural locations for communicating with the souls of the departed. A quiet lakeshore at dawn, a secluded forest clearing, the top of a hill where the wind blows. All these places are considered especially favorable for subtle communication. The sounds of nature serve as a kind of amplifier for our words and feelings, helping them to overcome the barrier between worlds. Nature speaks a language that the soul understands, believes Carol, a spiritual consultant from Oregon. When we are surrounded by the sounds of nature, our own vibrations are purified and become more attuned to the subtle vibrations of souls. In the long history of humanity, prayers and chants have always played a special role in attempts to connect with the world of souls. In virtually every culture, there are traditions of sound communication with the departed, from Gregorian chants to Tibetan mantras, from Orthodox hymns to African ritual songs. And this is not without reason. It is believed that certain sound vibrations possess a special penetrating ability, allowing them to reach the subtle levels of existence. A prayer spoken aloud, especially when combined with musical accompaniment, creates a unique energy field. When a person prays, their voice vibrates at a special frequency, and the emotional mood adds additional strength to these vibrations. At the moment of sincere prayer, we tune into a certain spiritual wave, explains Patrick, a longtime choir director in Pennsylvania. It's like tuning a radio. We're searching for the frequency on which we can be heard. Collective singing creates an even more powerful energy field. When a group of people unites in a single sound, a resonance effect occurs, greatly amplifying the vibrations. Research shows that during collective singing, not only the voices synchronize, but also the heart rhythms of the singers, creating a special state of unity. This unity becomes a bridge to other dimensions, believes Maria, a choir leader in New England. Our combined voices create a channel through which messages can travel in both directions. In the town of Santa Fe, New Mexico, there is a remarkable tradition. Every year on All Saints' Day, the local community gathers on a hill by the old cemetery to perform ancient chants dedicated to the departed. We believe that on this day, the veil between worlds becomes thinner, and our voices can reach those we love, says John, one of the oldest participants in the ceremony. Many of us feel the presence of our departed loved ones during the singing. A light touch on the shoulder, the unexpected scent of our mother's favorite perfume or grandfather's tobacco, a sudden warmth on a cold evening. Interestingly, scientific studies confirm that certain sound frequencies can indeed influence the state of consciousness, inducing altered states in which perception becomes more subtle. Perhaps it is in these states that we become more receptive to the subtle signals from the world of souls, and they become more attuned to our calls. Sound is the oldest and possibly the most powerful tool of communication between different levels of reality, asserts Dr. David from the University of Arizona, who studies the impact of sound vibrations on consciousness. It is possible that certain sound patterns can serve as a bridge connecting our world to the dimension where souls exist. Now that we have explored various aspects of how the soul perceives sounds, let's turn to practical recommendations that may help establish such a connection. It is important to understand that each person is unique, and what works for one may not work for another. However, there are some common principles that many find helpful. Creating a special sound atmosphere is the first step to making contact. Choose a quiet, peaceful place where you will not be disturbed. Many find it helpful to use background sounds that had special significance for the departed loved one, their favorite music, the sounds of nature they cherished, or even recordings of their voice if they exist. Barbara from Connecticut shares, I play the jazz compositions that my husband loved so much, and at that moment, the boundary between our worlds seems to thin. I feel his presence almost physically. Sincerity and emotional setting play a key role. Souls, it is believed, perceive not so much the words as the feelings behind them. Speak from the heart and do not try to formulate perfect phrases. When I talk to my daughter, I simply tell her about my day, just like I did when she was alive, shares Martha from Texas. I laugh, cry, sometimes even argue with her, and this creates a sense of real communication. Regularity and the creation of rituals help strengthen the channel of communication. Choose a specific time of day for such conversations and stick to it. This could be morning coffee, an evening walk, or a moment before bedtime. The ritual can be enhanced with symbolic actions. Lighting a candle, opening a window. It is believed that souls enter more easily through open windows. Or placing a photo of the departed. Every evening at 9 o'clock, I light a candle, put a photo of my mom, and tell her about the grandchildren, says Alan from Florida. This has become an important part of my life. The sound writing technique helps many establish a deeper connection. Record your thoughts on a voice recorder, speaking as if you are addressing the departed loved one directly. Then listen to the recording in a place that held special meaning for both of you. Some note that during the listening, there arises a special sense of dialogue, as if the soul responds at the level of feelings or sudden thoughts that come to mind. Remember that connecting with the souls of those who have passed is a very personal experience. Trust your feelings and do not let the skepticism of others influence your perception. Science is just beginning to study these phenomena, reminds Dr. Richard from the Institute of Consciousness Research, but the absence of scientific evidence does not mean the absence of the phenomenon. Our journey through the amazing world of how the soul perceives sounds is coming to an end. But remember, every conversation with departed loved ones can be the beginning of a new phase in the relationship, just in a different form. Everything we have discussed today, from the testimonies of people who have experienced near-death experiences to vibrational theories and the significance of natural sounds, points to one important truth. The connection between souls is not interrupted by physical death. We often think of death as a final point, as a wall that forever separates us from those we love. But perhaps this wall is more like a thin veil through which sounds filled with sincere love can penetrate. And although we cannot embrace the departed or see them with our physical eyes, our voices can become a bridge connecting our worlds. For those of you who have lost loved ones and feel the pain of that loss every day, I want to say, continue to talk to them. Share your joys and sorrows. Seek advice. Share news, just as you did when they were alive. You may not hear a response in the usual sense, but the answer may come in the form of a sudden feeling of peace, an unexpected thought, or a strange coincidence that seems too significant to be random. The story of Grace from Minnesota serves as a wonderful example. After losing her son, she spoke to him every day before bedtime. One day I asked him if he was happy where he was now. At that very moment, the burnt-out light bulb in the room suddenly flickered brightly and went out again. It was so surprising that I could not attribute it to coincidence. I felt his answer with all my heart. Remember that our voices are bridges between worlds, and the soul always hears the sincere call of love. It does not matter whether you believe in an afterlife from a religious perspective or prefer to think of existence continuing in the form of energy. The connection between those who love each other cannot be broken even by death. And finally, I want to ask you for a simple but important action. This evening, find a quiet moment and speak aloud the names of those you have lost. Tell them what you would like to say, with an open heart and without doubts that they can hear you. And then, simply listen, not just with your ears, but with your entire being. You may feel their presence, their love, their support, because true love knows no bounds, neither spatial nor temporal. I would love to hear your own stories in the comments. Share your experiences, for that is how we learn from each other and find comfort in common understanding. Thank you for being with us today and for diving into this amazing topic about the connection between worlds. Your attention and openness to such deep questions are truly valuable. If this topic has touched your heart or brought you comfort, please subscribe to our channel. There are still many interesting conversations ahead about the spiritual aspects of our lives, about connecting with departed loved ones, and about how to find meaning and comfort even in the most difficult times. Don't forget to click on the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes. And if you have your own stories or topics that you would like to discuss in future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. Take care of yourselves and remember, love and the connection between souls never disappear, they simply take on new forms.